Photography Daily.
When I came to the last section of the house that I was clearing, it was a huge chest under the stairs. And the guy said to me, it's just full of rubbish. There's nothing decent in there. But it was absolutely filled with photographs.
A fortuitous find in a house clearance leads to photographer Cara Mew starting a photography business. But more important, perhaps apposite, a relationship with photography.
After the house clearance was all cleared and done, and I took away the things that I wanted to sell or keep, and I'd sold them, I made almost to the penny the exact amount that my camera was.
I've spoken with Cara before on the FujiCast, but I'm returning because this is a news story, not one with decades of experiential nuggets of advice, but the real story of a photographer launching a photographic business during a difficult time in all our creative lives. Because of, that virus that starts with the letter C.
So I felt really, really sour and really bitter and just felt really down. And then all of a sudden something changed.
So today is a call out really to photographers who found this period has changed their photographic viewpoint.
Maybe the work that I'm making right now for my clients isn't the work that I want to be doing forever.
Cara Mew is known for her very honest personal stories on Instagram. That sometimes complex partner in our relationship with social media.
I think that we do very much live in this very highly polished Instagram world where we like to look pretty and we like to look attractive. We don't call it art anymore, we call it content. I hate that. Why are we talking about people's work and artwork as content?
And though, as you'll find today, her storytelling focus is shifting, we do take some time to talk portraits and the authenticity of a lived-in, show-everything session.
I've never, in the whole time that I've done this, gone into anybody's home and thought, oh my God, I can't take photos here. Because that home is just an extension of them. Those layers and those items, they give you a snapshot of history and of time.
We talk about turning the camera on ourselves.
You get to learn about, angles and shooting people, and you get to explore making pictures with your own time.
And we return to a subject we talked about this time last week, professional or amateur. Just who are we making our work for, primarily?
I don't make work for social media, and I don't make work for anybody else except for me. I've always done that. And the same when it goes to client work, I will turn up to a client's house and I will say, I am not making these pictures for anyone else apart from you.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today that photographer is Cara Mew. Patron of the day today is Alison Barkley, and I'm including her Flickr link on today's show page. As you look down the photo stream, you'll see a real fascination for the coastline, along with urban observation and wonderfully family days out, why not? But toward the end of page 1 and continuing into page 2, London's brutalist architecture hits you square in the chops. Actually, the pictures come from a brutalist photo walk, which sounds like a wonderful way to spend an afternoon recording a future Friday Photo Walk edition. Brutalism has been featured by many fine art photographers. We've talked about it before on this show. It's a style of building design from the 50s and up and grew out of modernism. I did look that up, yes. You have these massive, monolithic, often very blocky buildings made out of poured concrete. And the South Bank is actually famous for this, and let's put it this way. This was a time in the UK where working in the concrete supply chain was solid business in every way. We're also supported by MPB.com, who help you buy, sell and trade used camera gear in the US, the UK and Europe. And I think it's important to add that it's a service I personally use. I've bought used camera gear through MPB because I like the idea of a guarantee. I've sold kit I no longer use through them, and I've traded gear in against equipment I really want to add to my kit bag. They make every step of the journey fair and easy, and that is why I keep going back to them. So, Cara Mew. Well, as I said in the intro, I'd spoken with her not so long back on the FujiCast, but there were a couple of areas I wanted to expand on for you here. Primarily, I wanted to talk to her about, whilst not using the word pivoting. Yes, you'll not hear me use that word too often, though I'm aware we're all doing it to a degree during this time. Well, maybe not all of us, but I would lay a considerable wager in the currency of Garibaldi's that most of us have made course directional changes, life decisions, major or minor, tweaks if you will. I mean, I make them with this podcast. and certainly will continue to do so during the period where I'll be juggling both my photography and this cast. Kara is the same, though there was an added layer of complication in 2019 that she'll reference that meant the year pre-pandemic made life a little more complex still. Kara then is a new-ish photographer, balancing in the rift between pro and semi-pro, which sounds like a reference for the Upside Down in Stranger Things, I know, but I believe that's a fascinating place from which to tell a story, because it's not always clear-cut, this thing that we do. As creatives, we're constantly evolving, and I find that personally empowering. We don't do the stapled down partitions don't move clocking in card or app visits to many places now, do we? We've engaged our frontal cortexes. So today, a photographer with a passport to explore. We'll talk about finding photography, finding what you do and don't want to do with it, embracing the story, photographing people, finding who your actual clients are, and breathing life into your everyday observational picture making. Lots to talk about then with Kara Mew. Kara, there is a story about a house clearance and a camera, and it's the reason behind why all of this happened in many respects. Take me through that extraordinary... I think it's was it a coincidence? Would you describe it as a coincidence?
A complete coincidence, yeah. So that would have been 2017. And I just come out of a long-term illustration job. So I've taken on many different different types of work over the years, and I've got a fine art background. So after I had my first two children, I started dabbling back into being creative again. And I just finished this illustration job, and a family member, distant family member, said to me, "Oh, there's a house and it's full of stuff. And do you fancy coming to clear it out?" And I said yes.
Had you been working in house clearance then or something?
No, absolutely. Right. No, okay. Not at all. No. But what it is, everybody knows that I like a little bit of a mung, and I love a car boot, and I like buying and selling things. Yeah. So I'm well known in my family for finding a bargain and selling it on. And obviously this house was empty and it was full of things, and they didn't want it anymore. So they said to me, "Whatever you want, you can take, and you can do what you like with." So I ended up turning up this house clearance, and it was I found it really heartbreaking. I could never do house clearance as a job because I became so emotionally attached in this lady's life. I even dressed up in her clothes, and I was sorting out her wardrobe, and I ended up taking her coat home with me. It's hanging in my wardrobe. But I became really emotionally attached to her. So as I was going through her things and bagging things up for charity shops and things that I wanted to take home, I kind of got to know her through her things, and it really hit me on how emotional it can be when you're gone, and the things that you leave behind is really, that's it. That was all that was there. And when I came to the last section of the house that I was clearing, it was a huge chest under the stairs. Yeah. And the guy said to me, "Oh, it's just full of rubbish. There's nothing decent in there." But it was absolutely filled with photographs to the top. I spent about 4 or 5 hours going through them. And it had her wedding photographs in there. It had family, holiday. It had snapshots, days out. And from these photographs, I learned that she was a photographic apprentice in my local city. And she worked in a print lab that's no longer here. And at that time, it didn't really mean much to me. But I knew that the photographs were really important. So I ended up taking every single one home. So
you've got the pictures?
I have, yeah. I've kept every single one of them, yeah. Wow. I don't know what to do with them. I mean, I can't throw them out because that would be sacrilege. There's some that have got locations of the town in them in the background, which I think probably would hold a little bit of value for our local museum. So I will donate some of them to there. So I ended up keeping them all. Became really attached to her as a person, never knew her. And it just so happened that after the house clearance was all cleared and done, and I took away the things that I wanted to sell or keep, and I'd sold them, I made almost to the penny the exact amount that my camera was.
Oh, my word.
Prior to doing the house clearance, I was pestering the guys at the local London Camera Exchange and holding the Fuji X-T2, which I shoot on still. And it was the camera that I really wanted. I just didn't have the money for it. Yeah, it was practically to the penny. I think I put something really random, like 6p towards this camera. And it just felt such a lovely, full circle.
Have you ever thought about publishing these? I'm not sure about the legal standing or the...
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not sure on that. I mean, I use them for talks, and when I do some workshops, I tend to show people and get slideshow and have some of the pictures out for people to see. But I don't know if maybe they would hold an awful lot of interest to others if they haven't got that backstory. I'm not sure, but they're very much just real life, honest snapshots of her life, which she documented really from early childhood up until maybe 10 years before she died.
So there's not a Vivian Maier story here as such, is there?
She's not, sadly not, but it's still someone's story and it's still someone's history, and I absolutely love it, and I've saved them because they would have gone in a tip, they would have gone in the skip. Yeah.
What about the camera? Was her camera there?
No camera.
That's a shame, because that's a missing part of the story.
Yeah, no camera. There was no camera at all.
I know through looking at your work and reading your words, and we're going to come to your writing before long, I'm sure, but that you are a nostalgic person, I wonder actually. You mentioned you still use this XT2 today. Whether you'll ever stop using that, because the technology comes and goes. But this camera means so much more to you than just simply tech.
It does, because when I did this house clearance, I bought this camera, I was absolutely not setting up a business. I remember I came home, said to my husband, I am not setting up a business. This is not going anywhere. This is just for me. And that would have been April 2017. And then I think 4 months later, I did my first family shoot.
Yeah. But your dad also played a part in your photographic upbringing, didn't he? Dad was very into his. I think you described it as the camera was practically attached to his hip.
Yeah, always. Yeah, my dad was a massive part of my inspiration on shooting the way that I do, because he always had a camera with him and always took photographs of us growing up. And we've got massives of albums at my mum and dad's house. Yeah. And we still love looking at them now, all these time later. So it's just proof that taking the pictures, it's never boring and it never dates, and you never get fed up of looking through them and flicking through the photographs that people make.
With regard to the company, and there are two very definite photo brains at play and work here, and we'll come to that in a moment, but you called it the Glass Narrator, and why was that? Yeah,
so going back to my fine art days at university, I left university, and like lots of people that do art degrees, they didn't really prep you for maybe the real life. I came out of there and maybe I was a little bit of rose-tinted glasses. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I found it extremely difficult to find something local to where I live that was well paid as well within the arts world. So I ended up dabbling in a few other routes on things that I wanted to do. And then I stumbled into a little bit of illustration, and then I stumbled a little bit into oral storytelling. So I've done everything. Yeah. So I did this illustration contract, absolutely loved it, but it wasn't for me, because as much as I love drawing and I love making these pictures, I wanted to write as well, because I love writing. And I found that really difficult, that I was illustrating this work for other people's written pieces. So I ended up thinking, right, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a little go at doing some storytelling stuff, because I love telling stories. And that's what I did. I enrolled on this course, and it was the most amazing course I've ever done. It was in the middle of the woods in this little shack, and it was booze free for the weekend, and you had to be in bed by 9 o'clock, and you couldn't wear shoes, and you had to sit in this circle, and there was meditation, and it was all about telling your inner story. And at first I found it a little bit cringe, but then I became fully immersed in the whole thing, and I absolutely loved it. And I took on 2 contracts as an oral storyteller, and I worked in some festivals and did some storytelling for children. I've done open mic nights, stand-up nights, all things like that. Absolutely love it. But I was really missing the picture making part. So for me, photography does something which I can put the two together. So that's where the name The Glass Narrator came from. So I can narrate the pictures if I wish to. So if you follow my Instagram, you can kind of tell that I do that quite a bit. So I may have a piece of writing that maybe I've wrote in my sketchbook, and I think, oh my gosh, this would there's a picture in my mind. So I would maybe wait for that picture to happen and put them together, or I will take the picture and then the text will come. Or sometimes I will just write and it will be a standalone piece of text and a standalone standalone picture. But for me, it's given me that flexibility to be able to write and make a picture and not just one or the other.
There are these two definite photo brains at play here. There's the one that's that's the family historian, as you call it, and I love that title for it. A portrait shooter, if you like, but loosely so. It's a family historian.
Yeah.
And there's the carer who wants or likes the project's work. And I know this from a conversation I had with you when we spoke for the Fujicast. With the pandemic, has it changed your approach for the foreseeable future now? Are you going to do things differently now? Because prior to, or BC as I've started calling it, you were very clearly a portrait photographer or family historian. You know, we're making the family portraits. But things have happened over the last year, and your mind has changed, your story has changed. What's going to happen now? Where are you pushing the business?
Massively changed. So it's no secret that I had a really bad pregnancy with my third baby. So that completely threw a spanner in the works at that point. So that was 2019. Yeah. And 2019, I was pregnant, really, really poorly. And my whole business plan at that point was have the baby, get back on it. And that was still very much my plan come February last year. Baby was a little bit older. I was fully ready to go. I had my first big job in late March, and obviously lockdown happened. Yeah. And I remember feeling really sorry for myself because obviously everybody has gone through COVID, but I had equally lost 9 months prior to that, being in either hospital or in bed, really unwell. So I felt really, really sour and really bitter and just felt really down. And then all of a sudden something changed. And I think a lot of people, especially creators, have felt that all of a sudden everything stopped. And there was not so much, I didn't feel an awful amount of pressure to be making work. And I didn't feel that pressure to keep going and to be marketing work. And it felt lovely. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it. And it made me really realise that maybe the work that I'm making right now for my clients isn't the work that I want to be doing forever. And as much as I love shooting families, now at the moment it isn't something that I'm actively marketing. I'm not pushing families. If they contact me and they want to have a shoot with me, that I will 100% do it, because I do absolutely adore photographing other families. But for me, I want to make some long-term projects which I have been working away in the background but never really had time to do because I've always prioritised other things. And now I'm thinking it's the time to do it. COVID has made me realise that everything can sort of stop in a heartbeat, and I want to make sure that from now on that I'm producing work which I'm really proud about, I'm really passionate about, and I really want to get my teeth into, especially with my local community. So I'm taking on a portrait commission at the moment, and it's environmental portraiture work, but it's gritty and it feels like it really means something, and it's got a really nice longevity to it as well. And I really like that. I like the idea of having an idea, a plan, a photo series, which is possibly going to take me 6-7 months to complete. Very different to family work, but I think it's good to have a change. And I'm not saying goodbye to shooting families. I will always do it, but I think it's nice to put something else in the mix. And it feels right at the moment. It feels nice to be able to especially go out and meet people in the community after spending so long not seeing anybody. It feels really special to meet them and photograph them.
Let's go back over your portrait work as well, because as you say, you will do it even though you're not perhaps promoting it like you once were. I thought it was very clever, and we've talked about the family historian description. It's a wonderful way of it's a very clever way of saying one visit is not enough, really. It's like setting yourself up for a series. Is that why you did it that way?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing with the way that I shoot is time.
Yeah. The
more time that I spend with people, and the more time that I spend with clients and children, the more authentic selves that you show on film, on camera. And for me, I don't want anything but natural and normality. So that's why my shoots are long. That's why I shoot for maybe 4 or 5 hours at a time. That's why I've never really done anything like mini sessions. I've only ever worked fully invested and turned up in the morning and not left till late in the afternoon. I mean, my longest shoot has been 6 solid days. And
6 days?
6 days, yeah.
Where was that?
Poland.
Poland?
Yeah, Poland. Yeah, I flew to Poland. She was a fellow photographer, and I've never met her before. She's absolutely lovely, but I've never met her before. I only had a quick Zoom chat to make sure that she wasn't like some kind of crazy groomer that was trying to get me to another country. I didn't even think of things like that. And my husband was like, what if it's like a random bloke and you're just going to get on an aeroplane? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't think of that.
Well, he did have a point.
He did, yeah. I didn't even think of that. So luckily I did the Zoom chat and this lovely lady popped up. Yes. So I was like, whew, that's good. Flew to Poland for 6 days. Wow. And it was absolutely amazing, and lived in the family home with them. And for me, spending 6 days in someone's house was a dream, because I absolutely love people, and I love photographing people, and I love photographing people without the pressure of time.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned photographer, though, because I wonder that your style is the sort of thing that certainly myself, and I know a lot of other photographers, contact you and want to know, how do you do this, Kara? What do you do? How long do you do it for? And I sometimes wonder whether these sort of projects where everything is totally authentic, whether it's appealing more to photographers that would like to hire a photographer than what you might call if there is such a thing, regular client, or am I way off the mark there?
No, you're 100%. I would definitely say over the last 3 years, my Instagram following, my clients who contact me, people that I chat to online, are photographers, 100%. And I think the thing is, if we're going to say like bog standard normal people out there who don't own cameras, I think that they find me scary. I'm going to say that, because I think that they like the pictures that I make, but I think the thought of them having pictures made by me, of them looking like that, is scary. Right. Because I think that we do very much live in this very highly polished Instagram world where we like to look pretty and we like to look attractive, and that isn't me, and that is not my work. And I think people have this idea of imagery in their head that they want to specifically hang on their wall, and I think that sometimes I frightening when they think of that, like, oh my gosh, like, do I really want to have a whole album of me, like with my hair a mess, or the children like crying or jumping on the bed? And I can totally understand where people are coming from, and I know that it can be really daunting to let someone in, especially when you're at your most vulnerable, because you are at your most vulnerable when you are just being you in your own home.
In terms of when you're in these houses, I've done a handful of, not clearly anywhere near to the sort of style that you have at all. And I didn't take my slippers. Maybe that's where I was going wrong. But I find that the dynamic is really interesting. I found that the couple that I've done, the mother was completely applied to it. She wanted it. The kids were great as well. Yeah. Dad was in the corner a little bit more, ooh, what's this all about? Now, I don't know whether that's because I'm a bloke going into his domain and all sorts of socio things can fit into this. I don't know what your experience is with that, but I've found that you almost need to win father or the father figure over.
Dads are hard cookies. I think dads are hard. Yeah, they are. Mums are normally the ones who pick up their phones and take the pictures of the dads playing with the kids. So for me, in my family, if I was to say to my husband, oh, have you got any pictures of me with the kids that you've just randomly taken? He's going to say no, because he doesn't take them. And I can probably speak to an awful lot of mothers out there who have partners who aren't photographers, but they probably are not taking pictures of them. Because really, it is a lot of the mums. The mums see these moments, they take them, and they're recording them just on their mobile phones, but they're taking them. So part of me thinks, do dads maybe, who aren't photographers, think, well, we've got loads of pictures of me and the kids anyway. It's not an important thing. Yeah. But for the mums, when I go to the shoots, they often say to me like, oh, I haven't got any pictures of me like bathing the children, or I haven't got any pictures of me like breastfeeding the baby in the bed, or I've got no pictures of me in the garden. it made me think that maybe the reason that dads can be a little bit of a tough nut to crack during the shoots is because they feel that they've already got these images themselves. They're not professional, and maybe they're only on a cell phone, but they've still been taken. So I've often thought of that. So lots of times when I do a family shoot, I often talk about like, what pictures do you have as your family? What pictures are missing from your albums? And a lot of the time it is the mother and the children. So I will heavily sort of sway towards that way if that's what's missing, and take those. But again, I spend a lot of time in these homes, and after a while it just becomes natural and they forget that you're there. And that's when things start to like slot in place for me for working, because I always say the first hour I don't take photographs anyway. I go, I put my slippers on, I have a cup of tea, the children become used to me being in the house. I maybe talk to the parents and then wait for things to settle down. And then that's when you start to get the good pictures. So for me, the first hour's a write-off.
This is why this would never work in a studio. I mean, for a while in this country, we had one very big studio set up that did all these wacky pictures with people jumping in the air.
Yeah, I had.
And I don't know if you've had that experience, have you? Right? Okay. But I never felt that there was an awful lot of authenticity about that. That was an exceptionally contrived thing. And there's a sense of having to contrive some of this, of course, because you're there. You're by dint going to affect the it's a little bit by the fact they've got a photographer in. I mean, it's you're not a fly on the wall. You are Cara Mew on the wall. In fact, you had another phrase for it, didn't you? You said you weren't so much
flea on the dog.
A flea on the dog, which I love. But it wouldn't work in a studio, would it, for you?
No, it wouldn't. I've never shot in a studio myself either.
No? Right.
So, and I think the thing is, the best thing for me is authentic faces, authentic laughter, authentic moments, real connection, and ease, putting someone at ease. And I'm not saying that you can't do that in a studio, because you can. But for me, having that in a family home or a location that is really important to a family takes away all of that other barriers, I guess, where I don't think there's anything more wonderful than the home that you live in, or the home that the clients live in. Lots of people will say to me, my home is a mess, it's not decorated nice, I haven't cleaned, out the front's full of weeds. Literally, I don't care about things like that. It doesn't bother me. I've never, in the whole time that I've done this, gone into anybody's home and thought, oh my God, I can't take photos here, because that home is just an extension of them.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything more wonderful. Maybe it's just me being nostalgic again, but when you get the family photographs out and you flick through and you say things like, oh my gosh, do you remember when we had that carpet in the front room? It was so awful. Or, oh, that cup, I remember drinking out of that cup. I had that and I smashed it, blah, blah, blah. All those little parts of the house and the belongings make up the story of you and the story of your family. And for me, that's a massive, important part of my work. It's not about pushing everything out the frame and making a nice, clean space. It's almost pushing everything in it, because it's really important. Those layers and those items, they give you a snapshot of history and of time. I mean, I think any of us can probably pick out a family photograph, and by looking at maybe what we're wearing and what things are around us, like what cushions are on the sofa or what toys are on the floor, you can roughly find out or work out what year that was. And I think I absolutely celebrate when I go to someone's house and say, oh gosh, we've got like no wallpaper in the hallway, it's completely stripped. And I'm like, yes, I love that. Or the dogs chewed the carpet, and I'm like, brilliant. Or I love it, everything like that, because it's all stories, it's all relevant, and it all makes up you, and it makes up family life.
Back with Cara Mew in a moment. What do most camera ambassadors have in common? I'll tell you, they use the Fundy Designer, the world's most powerful album design and IPS software, to double their wedding and portrait revenue. So, get the leading software used by the world's most profitable photographers for designing and selling albums, wall art collections, cards, studio magazines, that kind of thing. You can download the free trial or save an extra 25% with the discount code, which is Photography Daily. That's Photography Daily. You will find a link to Fundy, of course, on the show page today. Right, back to Cara Mew. Do you take pictures then of the trinkets then? Are you saying that you would take the picture of the dog-chewed carpet and... Yeah, so people don't have to be in these images. We're collecting trinkets too.
Definitely, yeah. There's nothing odd. If I see something, like especially if people have got like bookshelves or like toy boxes, I always make sure that they're definitely within the shot as well. Yeah. My personal work, I photograph a lot of what I would say maybe still life. So if I go to my parents or my grandparents, I do a lot of pictures of like stacks of piles of things and jewelry boxes, and because they're the kind of things that change and go, and they're the things which visually I really miss. So I've got a lot of images like that which I shoot, locations, items, mess, random things, because in the future I know that I'm going to really enjoy looking at them.
Well, I think you're right, because I'm thinking, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, I don't know why, but I'm thinking back to my grandmother, who lived on her own in Winchmore Hill, Enfield, in North London. And her house was like it never changed. I mean, after World War II, she never changed it. It never changed. The plugs were the same. She never had the place modernised. My dad always had to put on the old plug, which was terribly dangerous. I don't know what they did with the electrics, but in the end, but also things like the oak beam that was underneath the stairs that shored up the stairs in case a V1 rocket would land anywhere close, which Dad, who wasn't sent to the countryside like so many children were, he wasn't evacuated, he slept under this oak beam. Now, I remember these things because Grandma, bless her, then in later life, she put her sherry bottles underneath that beam. But maybe she thought the V1 rocket might take the sherry collection away. I don't know. But that's the stuff I remember. And I don't have any pictures of that. I would love to have a picture of the shored up stairs, which, like Harry Potter, Dad slept under.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And you're right. You haven't got a picture of it. No. And you wish you did. And you wish you did. And I think that we can talk to anybody, photographer or not, about memories and moments and childhood. And have you got pictures of those? And most of them will say no. And I know that my mother and father-in-law, they're a little bit older than my parents because I'm quite a little bit younger than my husband. And they will actively talk about photos and the photos they have. They don't have many, maybe 3 shoeboxes full of photos, because they didn't have much money back then. They had just come out of the war. They didn't have much money, and making photos was a luxury. They don't have those printed moments, but the ones that they do, they cherish. Yes. So like my mother-in-law just this morning got a picture out, a little tiny picture of 2 little dogs, and this little picture sits in this little metal box in her front room, and they were her dogs from when she was a child. Oh. And it's things like that which really kick me in the gut, because it's the little things that don't always mean a lot. And at this time, but they mean a massive thing later on. And like I will say to my mother and father-in-law, like, oh my gosh, like your house sounds amazing. Like they had chicken coops in the back and a pond, and they kept tortoises. Her dad brought a pony home from the pub. He won it in a raffle. And my husband's nan made him march back to the pub with this pony, saying we're not taking it.
How random.
Honestly. And they used to race pigeons, all these wonderful things. Like they've told me, I've been with my husband 21 years. So I've grown up like with all these lovely stories of rabbits hanging at the end of the stairs, like ready to eat and stuff. But there's no pictures of these. And the thing is, I think back then people wouldn't have thought to make pictures of them because it would have been expensive. And just to own a camera would have been a luxury. But now we live in a world now where everybody is probably less than a meter away from some kind of photo making device. We have that ability to make these images for ourselves. They're not Instagram worthy. They're not Facebook worthy. Reclaiming the family album, which is, I love saying that because it's so important. Like, I want to bring back the family album. I want to make like big banners and put it on the bus. Like, where's your family album? Like, are you making a family album? Are you putting stuff in your family album? If not, I'm like, right, come on, let's do it. Because we are photographing every single day, but we are losing the most wonderful parts of our history to technology by not printing them.
Well, this is interesting, actually, because I think this dovetails very, very neatly to social media. And this is an important part of, you're not going to like this word, this is an important part of your strategy, maybe. Sorry. But you do make it very, you've made it very personal. It's very carer. Okay.
Yeah.
There are lots of self-portraits. They're thoughtfully done. They're not just selfies. There is a difference. You talk about your third pregnancy a lot, which you've mentioned, and the physical problems that brought you. You're not afraid to tackle issues like, I even saw that image you made with a shadow, the neurodiversity play.
Oh,
just
yes.
Amazing. Was it a conscious decision to lay yourself bare mentally? Although physically you do that too.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that when we look at art history, go back in time, that as soon as mirrors become accessible, so if we go right back, mirrors were really expensive. So no one did self-portraits because we couldn't see ourselves. So as soon as mirrors became affordable and accessible, the first time artists turned a mirror to themselves, because we're always here, we're always ready, we're always willing ourselves to be a model. And there've been many of times that I've said to my children, I'd like to take a picture of you. They don't want to, so I've taken a picture of myself.
Yeah.
So, and also you get to learn about, I guess, like angles and shooting people, and you get to explore making pictures with your own time. So sometimes when you've got a model, or if you've got your children, they're only going to give you a very short amount of time to play. So for me, self-portrait was a way to really understand my camera, test things out, and work through ideas, because I could probably shoot for maybe an hour, 2 hours if I wanted to. And I think that's like with all artists, whatever medium they worked in throughout art history, they turned the paintbrush, the camera, the pencil to themselves, because they could then invest that time in their craft to get to know it and get to work on it.
Self-doubt is something that many photographers suffer from, and of course imposter syndrome and all those kind of things, which seems to be mentioned even by the best, actually. What's your advice to photographers? What have you learned about self-doubt, and through all the honesty and the integrity and the authenticity, the diaries of life that you put on that Instagram account, showing you when you're not well, when you don't feel well, when you were going through some hell during that third pregnancy, you still put the pictures up?
I did, but self-doubt is something which really is like racks inside me as well. And I think all creative people have that in them. And I think all creatives have that sort of worry about showcasing their work and submitting their work to places and showing their work off. I know that I still do. With the pregnancy stuff, I'm looking at it now. I've printed that whole project off. I've only probably shared 5 images from that whole project, because even now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, do people really want to see this? Is this really relevant? Do I want to share it? Did I just make this work for the family albums? Do I really want to put it out on social media? So self-doubt for me it's a big thing. It is a big thing. I'm not going to lie. I often sit there and think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But do you know what? When it comes to actually making the pictures, I just make them, because I don't often have a plan. So especially with my personal projects and my personal family work, I don't make work for social media. And I don't make work for anybody else except for me. I've always done that. And the same when it goes to client work, I will turn up to a client's house and I will say, I am not making these pictures for anyone else apart from you. If you don't want to share them, I won't share them. If you don't want to share them, you don't have to share them. If you don't want to put them on the wall, don't put them in an album. These are photographs which are not for anybody else. We're not making them for likes. We're not making them for shares. We're not making them for competitions. We're making them for what they're intended to, which is a part of your history, printed. And I think if I just stick to that, then that's good, because that's my baseline. I'm just making the pictures. They're going to be squirreled away. That's fine. I guess I'm not one of those people that think, right, I'm going to do this pitch. I'm going to make these images and I know exactly where I want to share them and I want to do that. That's not really how I work. And I know a lot of photographers do that. Again, it's not a bad thing, but for me, it's not. And I sort of feel like just making them and sitting on them is the key part, because sometimes better things come from them. And we live in a world where everything is very instant. We can stick it on Instagram. We can print it like via my printer within seconds of each other. And I have a love-hate relationship with social media as an artist, in the sense that artwork, we don't, maybe on especially on Instagram, we don't call it art anymore, we call it content. I hate that. Why are we talking about people's work and like artwork as content? And I absolutely hate the treadmill of Insta, where you always need to look busy and you always need to be making, and you need to post pictures at a set time, because that's how Instagram works, to get the most likes and followers. And artists don't work like that. We take our time. We sit on bodies of work. We come back to things. We might have a picture project. Like I've got a couple of projects at the moment, long-term personal photography projects, which I dip in and out of. Some weeks I might invest 6 hours in that. Next week, none. But it's not something which I'm able to churn out, make a good picture, churn that out, make a good picture, show it off. I think all artists need to sit on their work, reclaim their studio space again, go back in their studio where people used to lock them down, stay in there with cups of tea and just put your pictures on the wall to get a feel for what you want instead of sharing them. And I did fall into the trap of sharing a lot of work when I first started, because I thought that's what I had to do. But now I just share when I want to share, and I share the pictures that I want to share, and I don't get caught in any traps. I don't get caught in any business head Instagram, SEO, Facebook posting things, because that is not what I want to do. And that I find that it bogs me down. And I find that if I'm having to post 4 images a week and doing an Instagram reel and making stories, I'm not having that time invested in making work. And we can't do it all.
Oh, there. I'm listening to you thinking, Cara seems to have it fairly sorted in terms of the work. I know that personally things have been tough with some of the stories that you talk about. Are there any high notes, any low notes in your business so far?
I guess my high would be, so 2019, I ran my first workshop. Yeah. I didn't think anybody would ever want to come to a workshop with me. Quite frankly, because I look at my pictures, maybe this is imposter syndrome or self-doubt, but I look at all these amazing workshops out there with people that are running how to shoot maybe really beautiful stylized weddings, or I don't know, like beautiful like lifestyle family things, which you can actively say to people, okay, this is what I do. I pose my family like this. The lighting's like this, where I don't work like that. So for me to teach a workshop, it's quite difficult, because I can't really teach posing and lighting or studio setup or interacting, making your couples interact, because that's not what I do. So I wrote a workshop, and it was all about what we've been speaking about: photographing for yourself, photographing your personal stories, making sure that you are your family historian and you're recording the key parts of your family history. And I ran this workshop, and it was wonderful. I absolutely loved it. And people have gone away and they have taken more photographs of their family. They're actively thinking about images that they want to make, and they're making them with intent, and they're not just snapping them, because there is a difference between a snapshot and a documentary family photo. It's leveling up from that. I mean, I take the most awful photographs on my phone of my children because they're a snapshot, and that's fine. But when I've got my camera in my hand, I have that intent, and I have that, what do I want to make this image? What am I trying to record at this moment in time? Yeah. What is the story here? And recording that. And there's a lot of people out there who shoot in different genres. Studio, lifestyle, pet photography, wedding photographers, and they've got maybe £6,000-7,000 worth of kit sitting on their bookcase, and they've never recorded their own family. So to hear that these people that have come to my workshop and are doing what I'm doing and recording their family, I love that. It just makes me feel so happy and warm, because you know that those pictures are going to be cherished forever. And it's just a lovely thought that we are reclaiming the family album again. People out there are printing and put it in their work. Honestly, I'm going to be like a print police. I'm going to phone people up. Have you printed those pictures? No, why not? Print them.
Cara, come the revolution, I'm making you the Minister for Reclaim Your Family album. If there's such a department.
Yeah, and I want to wear a suit.
And slippers.
I've never worn a suit in my life, and I think I need to wear a suit for that job.
Yeah.
It's really important. It's really important. And yeah, I would say that's definitely a high for me, running these workshops and filtering through like my absolute passions to other people, because sometimes they don't realise what's missing. And there's people that have come onto these workshops and they've said to me like, gosh, yeah, I take loads of photos of my family. Like, I've got everything. And then I do these couple of like exercises, and they're like, oh my God, I haven't got a picture of this. I haven't got a picture of that. Like you said, haven't got a picture under the stairs.
Nope.
And it's things like that are triggered, and then they go home and make them. And I just think that's really cool. I love that. Just spending a couple of hours with me on this workshop has given somebody maybe a little bit of inspiration to make what pictures they would have never made before.
My thanks to Cara Mew. News of the next show in just a moment. And that's it for today. Keep sending your questions, your feedback and photo stories to studio@photographydaily.show. Studio@photographydaily.show. So that I can feature you in the mailbag edition, which is the Friday photo walk. On that note, remember you can also send in pictures from your own photo walks to appear on the episode's show page online, with links to your website or Instagram. If you haven't yet, take a moment to join our private Facebook group and follow us on Instagram. Links to all this and our guests and our wonderful supporters on Patreon will be on the Photography Daily show page today. I know, I always tell you that. Linked to in your podcast player app as always. Wednesday. Now I'm talking with a photographer called Rick Findler, who is an independent photojournalist, which means he researches the stories he believes the world needs to see. And it doesn't come without risks.
The risk of running into either a Taliban checkpoint or a militia or just some bandits that wanted to rob you and things is quite high. But as long as you don't run into those sorts of things, then you're fine. And we were lucky enough to get back to Kabul and back in time for me to catch my flight to back to England.
Rick Findler on Wednesday's show. Music today from the incredible artlist.io, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.